All right, so here I have the Fullshade 2.0 for the Model Y. I'm going to talk about the pros, the cons, and details on the installation process. Okay, so for the pros, there's definitely no rattle. I took some footage driving on the highway and driving over bumps and such. I'll put that later on in the video. You'll hear some rattling, but it's not from the Fullshade itself. It's from random things like this car seat, and we had a stroller in the back. Next pro, it definitely feels like the car cools faster. I can't say for sure if it keeps the car that much cooler when it's just sitting in the sun. Today was a pretty hot day. It was sitting out in the sun for maybe half an hour, and I looked at the internal temperature on the Tesla app. It said it was 100 degrees. I think without this Fullshade, it probably would have been closer to 110 degrees, but it's hard to say. But once I started turning the AC on, it definitely felt like it cooled very quickly. One thing I was worried about was that it would make the sunroof seem a lot smaller, but I really don't notice it. I mean, obviously you see these side borders, but it still feels like this big open glass sunroof, so that's great. And there's still plenty of headroom for me. So I personally, in the driver's seat, I like to put my seat very high up because I just like sitting higher. So I think my head is probably as close as it could be to the sunroof, but there's still plenty of clearance even when this thing is closed, and it doesn't feel claustrophobic or anything like that. All right, so now for the cons. You'll see more details of this when I show how the installation process is, but since the 2.0 ships the frame in pieces and not as a single piece, you have to connect these side pieces to the front piece and the back piece. And you can see that there's this overlap here, and they basically just provide an adhesive strip to make these stick together, but this adhesive strip is useless. As you can see, it doesn't really stay. And I tried to super glue these two together, but instead of the super glue works, but what it did is it super glued to the adhesive strip, and now the adhesive strip is separating from this piece. So I guess I could super glue on the other side of the adhesive strip, but honestly, I would just remove the adhesive strip completely and then super glue these together. It's a little hard to super glue these now when it's already installed, but I wouldn't super glue them before installation because there is some flex in how these parts are connected. So if you super glue them without putting them in the car first, you might glue them together in a position that's, not exactly the shape of the roof. Next con is this right side is a little off. You can see this does not line up as well as it could. This just seems like the railing on the other side of this portion is just maybe a little off compared to the other side. Not a huge deal, but I don't know, I'm kind of OCD. And that is it for the pros and cons. So let's talk about the installation process now. Unfortunately, I didn't have the foresight to film when I actually put this thing together, but I have the installation guide here, and I can talk about some things to note throughout this. So it comes in these 4 parts that are, again, separated, and you basically slide the side parts into these plastic corner connectors. In this picture, the connector is white, but mine are actually black. But yeah, you slide these in, and when you're connecting them, it can be a little difficult, but you should be able to push it all the way in, meaning you shouldn't be able to see this middle slit at all. I think this is pretty straightforward, but these, they're like these square plates that act as anchor points for the string. So basically you unscrew this screw, you put the screw through the hole on this string, and then you screw it back in. This was unclear to me where these plates went. Initially, I thought they were on the inside, but turns out that they're actually supposed to go on the outer edge of these side pieces. And the outer edge will have like a square cutout in this railing here that these square plates just nestle into. The front and back pieces are what contain the actual like blinds, and you know, they'll out of the box they'll be completely compressed. Now when I took mine out for one of these, the blinds were not centered, like they were shifted more to one side than the other. But these are not secured in place. You can play around with the position until you get them centered. One difference about the 2.0 is that instead of having clips that you have to insert and then line up perfectly, now you get a crossbar, which is really nice because the holes are already aligned. So this crossbar, you position it towards the back, and then the spacing of the holes are already set, but you just have to get the front to back position right, which is easier to do. And to do that, you can, in the back portion of the frame, there's holes, and you get this Allen key. You can use the Allen key if you stick it all the way through and then into the matching hole on the bar. You can use that to align the position. One last thing, when you expand this for the first time, you might see that some of these folds have like a crease in the middle or like a little dimple, and you can get rid of that. That just happens because either the fold before it or after it is kind of stuck together, so you just have to kind of separate them, and yeah, then it'll look nice and clean like this.